You look great. You
Thank
look
you.
nice. And we are live. And we're just a couple of minutes late. Excuse me, public, Florida You Judge viewers. I had a little bit of a situation here that I had to resolve technically. So it's good seeing you finally, even through camera, but we've had an opportunity on various occasions to talk. You're very knowledgeable. I enjoyed talking to you. We're
Always.
here this afternoon and you have an impressive build up on your social media. Your Twitter, you have like 100,000 followers, and on your Facebook yesterday, I saw that you had like 43,000. And so I have the article up that we're going to be discussing today, and I know, Grant, that this is going
Sure.
to be very informative for the public in general. But here locally, where I'm at in the Tampa Bay area, I see a lot of activists. And by the way, I did send the link to have this person join us, who's a community activist. She's going to be very interested in what you have to say, and she's going to share on her social media. She has a very significant following, but this is something that I see routinely, even now in the election cycle that we're in.
Sure.
Candidates that are seeking office, they get annoyed at critics. Okay. I sent an email this morning to my local sheriff. I'm in Pinellas County. My sheriff is Sheriff Bob Gulteri, and I've been critical of him. And I'm presuming, I suspect that he might not be very happy. He post criticism, or pre-criticism rather, every now and again would respond to my emails. And after I criticized him, I don't get any responses. I will be fair in saying that I have brought issues to his attention, which he has then channeled to the local persons in his agencies, and I've received timely resolution. But my communication with him, it doesn't appear to be something that has remained open as a result of my criticism. This is I'm gonna read this. I'm gonna share this with the public now, because we're gonna discuss this issue. What happens when a public official blocks you on social media? That's the topic that you're gonna come on and discuss. We will be taking calls later. I have the call-in line available for those of you who'd like to ask Grant any questions. And the call, let's put up the call-in numbers: 813-221-9700. Grant knows what he's talking about. And so if you want to call in and ask him a question after he addresses this article and discuss this generally, we'll take call-ins. Grant, I'm going to share this article. Hold on a second. Let's go.
Yes, the Miami New Times article about Miami-Dade State Attorney Catherine Fernandez Rundle.
Okay. And this is a 2017 article, and the headline is Kathy Rundle. She's a Democrat. I know her. Why? Because I grew up in Miami. Very familiar with her. I have a letter from her on a case when my grandfather was hit by a car. He eventually died. 92. He had lived a nice long life, but I know her. I'm very familiar with who she is. I grew up hearing her name because she's been a long-standing state attorney in Miami-Dade County.
That's correct. 27 years in office. 27
years in office. So let's go ahead and read it. I'll be the broadcast live audible for the public, and it's a good thing because I know sometimes the public doesn't really, mostly, I think, my experience is people don't really like to read, especially now in the era where we're bombarded with information. It's hard, but this is a good one worth to read, and I'm going to read it because I want to stop at certain sections in the article and ask you questions. So,
well, I'd also like if you let me tell the story of how this all came about, because this is the New Times's reports.
Oh, I'm sorry. I accidentally removed you, but go ahead. Start from where you began, telling the story.
So that's the Miami New Times's report. I actually wrote a series of reports that led to the Miami New Times covering it, and so it would be great if I can give the audience a little bit of color on what happened.
Let's do the lead-in. So do that. Yeah. Establish that. What led to this article?
So on Memorial Day 2017, a local activist and member of the a former member of the City of Miami Civilian Independent Review Panel posted a tweet mocking Catherine Fernandez Rundle, our SAO. She had shared a American flag and said something about preserving people's rights. And he said, like, how about the right to not be shot by the police? Why don't you resign? Something, critical, and quote tweeted her. So he shared her tweet under his tweet and made his criticism. And she responded by blocking him. This fellow, Danny Suarez, is also an active member of the Naval Reserve as a corpsman. So there she is, blocking a member of the military on Memorial Day for sharing her Memorial Day celebration post with some criticism, something protected by the First Amendment.
Thank you.
And at the time, she was under fire because she had just released the results of a 5-year-long investigation into a gentleman named Darren Rainey, who was killed by prison guards inside of the Dade Correction Facility, which is owned by the state, by the way. It's not owned by the county, even though it's called the Dade Correction Facility. So the county and her office had nothing to do with this poor man's death inside of the prison, but he was left inside of a steaming hot shower that was jerry-rigged to produce like the highest intensity water, like heat water. And then he was left in there for 2 hours. He was on medication for depression, which left him even more vulnerable to body temperature swings. And then he passed away. She took 5 years to investigate and then tried to news dump it in the middle of March 2017, while everybody was looking the other way with Trump doing certain crazy things. And of course, the entire community was in an uproar. And all this happened on Memorial Day. So imagine what it would take to get the Miami community in an uproar about this death that lasted for multiple months. That's how bad it was. So that's the context of this article. I had written the article about Danny, and then I went to follow up. So go right ahead.
Okay, so let's go back to the article. Is it still up? Let me see.
Bring it on up.
Okay, so I gotta share that again. Okay, so are you seeing that, Grant?
Yes, I see it. Go right ahead.
Okay, great. So let me go ahead and read it, and I'm going to ask you questions. So this came out June 7th, 2017. Jerry Ionelli wrote this article. Miami-Dade County State Attorney Catherine Fernandez Rundle is reportedly considering a run for a statewide seat, perhaps even governor. That's an interesting development in light of the fact that a sizable portion of Rundle's own local Democratic Party believes her office worked to cover up the death of Darren Rainey, a schizophrenic black man who died in a state prison shower after allegedly being trapped inside under scalding hot water as punishment. Rundle faced angry questions and narrowly escaped a vote demanding her resignation over that case when the local Dems couldn't get a quorum last month. Could you explain that to us?
Well,
what happened there?
Just a technical issue. So the vote was actually brought up 3 times by the local party. There was an attendance issue. The party had expanded its numbers, and you had to have 300 people standing in the room to take a vote. So they had to hold the vote a few times. Each time it passed, but there weren't enough people the first and second time. And this article is written in between attempt number 1 and attempt number 2.
So what if that would have passed?
Number 2 and number 3.
What if that would have passed?
It did pass. It did pass. The local party called for her to resign her seat over her handling of the Darren Rainey case, and they renewed that. They asked her to suspend her primary campaign in the summer, and she should have.
So when she doesn't do that, then what happens? What are the ramifications? What are the consequences to her as a Democratic member?
This is a political declaration. They're telling every Democrat in the county, don't vote for her.
Gotcha. Understood. So that's the ramification. Gotcha. All right.
That is the ramification. I mean, I've never seen that happen where a party says, "Hey, elected official, why don't you drop out of your primary?"
But that's just like you said. Now I understand. It's like a shot across the bow. Like, listen, we're not going to support you.
Right. Exactly right. And she fought vigorously against both the first resolution. The second one was pretty quick. Because of the pandemic, there wasn't a protracted political fight, and all they were doing was renewing the original. But the original was a protracted political fight. She sent teams of the political appointees in the SAO to argue out her case in front of members of the party as if it was like a trial. And I was in the room for one of these, and I asked the number 2 prosecutor who just left her office to serve as the head of the Miami-Dade Public Commission on Ethics. And Mr. Araujo, I asked him, I said, what if you had a mentally disabled or special needs child, someone with mental illness in your family who wound up in the care of these prison guards, because it happens a lot to mentally ill people. We don't have a mental health system in this country. We throw people in jail. And he stunned the room. He said, you know what? This is not a hypothetical. I have a special needs child, and I would not trust them to these folks who his office declined to even charge and attempt to get for some sort of negligence or negligent homicide, or just failure to adhere to their duty as, servants of the state who had to protect this man from dying in their custody. I mean, we all thought there just has to be something you could charge these folks with. So,
and she didn't.
She didn't.
Okay.
She did not.
Okay. So again, where it's 114, the call-in number is 813-221-9700. We have Grant Stern with us. He's going to be addressing the topic for this afternoon of what happens when a public official, due to dissent, criticism, decides to block someone from the public, maybe even a constituent. So let me read on. Let's see here. If Rundle decides to run for governor, she'll have to get used to more public criticism. That might be tough for her. According to the public records that local independent journalist Grant Stern shared with New Times, Rundle has blocked more than 100 people on Twitter. And a great number of the blocked accounts are either critical of her record or advocating for justice for Rainey. I'm not going to read any more. For those of you who are interested in reading the complete article, it's in Miami New Times. And again, the headline is Kathy Rundle, who wants to be governor, blocks critics and Rainey activists on social media. So let's get to the discussion on this topic.
She didn't run for governor, and it was because of this. So you think there's not consequences? That is a consequence.
Do you think she'll ever
Never
run?
Never.
No. You think forever she will be no?
Never, ever. I mean, it's one of these things like, there are other people that are better positioned now. She's not going to get the nod from the party at this point. Obviously, I mean, when the local party does a pair of resolutions, not just one, but follows it up with a second, it tells the state party, hey, don't do this. You need the state party to run for governor, because the state party literally runs the gubernatorial campaigns. That's their primary job, to run the off-year elections for all the state governor and cabinet offices.
I think this is a timely quote. I love it. I reference it and quote it often. This is what Theodore Roosevelt said: to announce that there must be no criticism of the president, or that we are to stand by the president, right or wrong, is not only unpatriotic and servile, but it is morally treasonable to the American public.
I agree. And the story of that story is that after she blocked Danny and I reported on it, I followed up with a request for her block list. And if your watchers out there want to Google Mayor Philip Levine and social media blocking, I am still following up on my lawsuit against him over social media blocking. I requested a copy of his Facebook block list, and he's been refusing to give it to me for all these years. They're still litigating it. He's paying $1,000 an hour lawyers, former U.S. attorneys, to fight this case unsuccessfully. And he did actually run for governor, and the social media blocking sunk his campaign as well. So
I remember him. He came out here and he was campaigning out here.
Well, there's one thing I can tell you about Philip Levine. If his lips are moving, he's lying. So I'm sure it was memorable, except for the part where he said that Bill Clinton were like the two ex-presidents. That's what they called themselves.
So this is going to be very informative, because a lot of people I have seen on social media here locally saying, "Ooh, so and so blocked me." After I
get down to the nitty gritty, right? So first of all, social media blocking will totally like rocket fuel, ignite whatever issue that they've blocked you over, and you should start with that. That's the number one consequence, that people find out about this stuff more because they're trying to suppress it. and you know, if somebody blocks you on social media, the first thing you should do is tell everybody and their brother, I just got blocked by this person. That's stage
What does
one.
that say about what does that say about somebody that is in office? But listen, the other day,
Well, it says that they can't take criticism, they're thin-skinned, and they don't care about violating the Constitution. And that's a bad statement. That is a bad place to be in for any elected official who's in office and using those official accounts to block you. And a lot of elected officials, and Philip Levine was, you know, he kind of did things a couple of ways, but a lot of elected officials will use their official accounts for everything. It's their personal account, their official account, their campaign account.
Okay.
Like that's what Mayor Levine did.
Is that akin to what my parents fled from? I mean, it's a milder form, but
yeah, no, it's direct. I'd say it was more direct. It's not milder. With Philip Levine in particular, he's a great example. He employed a private company to block everybody on his Facebook page for him, even though he was disseminating lots of primary source material about doing his job as mayor, which made that page a public forum.
Right. So you're suppressing the centers like they do in North Korea and Cuba.
It's worse than that. Hold on. So like, yes, it's like that, but there's a component to it that people don't get. It's that then you have all your friends come on and say what a great guy you are, and there's no dissent. And that influences people, because people are influenced by what they read on these platforms. Otherwise, nobody would bother.
Listen, isn't that supposed to be?
Isn't
that what the founding fathers wanted? Like dissemination of information and let the people
free discussion, and not to let the government decide who gets to speak and who doesn't.
Thank you. Right. And that's why this is a platform that I've created in order to let everybody, even people that disagree with me, I invite them on to say whatever they want to say about. And I have opinion too. I don't give that up just because I'm creating this platform and letting people come on. I get an opinion too. You might not agree with it, but let's discuss important issues and topics based on accurate information. And so we can make good decisions about policy, people in office.
Well, let me tell you a little bit about Kathy Fernandez Rundle in the context of what we've been discussing. So when I requested her Twitter block list from her office, like through the front door, through the public information officer, I didn't, contact her directly. I didn't tweet at her. I didn't go on her Facebook page. I just went to the official PIO. And I asked them, I said, please give me a copy of the block list. They said, we don't have that. It doesn't exist. Nobody's blocked.
And then, you were blocked by that time.
I wasn't blocked by Rundle, but Mr. Suarez, the Navy veteran,
was blocked.
The active service Navy, corpsman, active service reserve, because he was active service at the time anyway. He was serving in DC. He was there, Anyway, so they denied me, and then I sent them a copy of the block screen that Mr. Suarez had sent. And within an hour, they sent me the entire block list.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
Now, everything about this, it's just a violation of First Amendment rights, that she's blocking people on Twitter. Like that wasn't established by a court of law back then, but it has been since then. And it's pretty plain. And it's enough that she would have known. I mean, she's a lawyer. She has no excuses. She doesn't have a qualified immunity to hide behind in that kind of maneuver.
So you know what? And there's deceit there.
There is deceit there, but it gets worse. And this is important for your Florida audience, which is that alone is a violation of the Sunshine Law. If I had chosen to go to court, I could have run off to court and said, I need a declaration over this.
Okay. So how?
I need the court to declare.
How is that a violation? Explain it to us.
They unlawfully refused my request for public records. They said, we don't have it. If I didn't have that other screenshot to basically twist their arm
then they were like, we're caught.
Right.
We're caught.
I caught them. That's right. I caught the
Isn't that a crime?
Attorney's office.
Isn't that a crime?
Actually, if you can prove intent, then it is a crime. But who's going to prosecute the state attorney for committing a crime?
Can't the FDLE do that? Okay. All right. Listen, I gotta ask.
In theory, I mean, that's
because then that's like taking it to them and taking them to task. Like, why aren't you?
You know what?
prosecuting some.
Look, I've had that experience, and I'll tell you about it. First of all, trying to get the FDLE to prosecute Fernandez Rundle or somebody in her office for intentionally violating the Sunshine Law, that would be like getting the tiger to prosecute its own stripes. Okay, that's first of all. I actually went to the FDLE with a very prosecutable 119 case, and they were like, you know, you got this 500 pages of evidence and stuff here, but we'd have to go to Kathy Fernandez Rundle to get it prosecuted, and she doesn't really like these cases.
That's a problem. So we need to we need to create a system where that doesn't happen in the future. How we're going to do it, I don't know, but we do, because they need to follow the law as well. And
yes,
that's very important when they're
problem. And now you're seeing the kind of sticky issues that arise with this. And that's why you generally tend to run off to civil court, because at least you can get a shake there.
Okay, so tell us.
Run off to state court. You could run off to federal court even.
Educate us. Somebody goes on to some politician or candidate social media site, and they start criticizing them, and then they start deleting comments, blocking.
Well, the first thing you do is get screenshots. Screenshot it before you post it, the whole screen. Screenshot the deletion. Okay, deleting posts. That is also a violation of the Constitution, and there is case law in the Fifth Circuit, the conservative Fifth Circuit, which means it'll fly everywhere, that says that it actually triggers what's called Monell liability when an agency deletes the comments on Facebook. In other words, the agency can be held responsible. The qualified immunity doctrine that gives police officers a free pass for violating the Constitution doesn't even apply. They don't even check that test. You just go straight to having the agency held responsible for their actions. And that's kind of a big deal. There's not a lot of that in the civil rights litigation space that I've heard about, but that's what happened in the Fifth Circuit when they ruled that there was Monell liability for that action. You just have to Google Monell liability. I'm not a lawyer. I'm just telling you what to look for.
Right.
But
you have the spelling for that, Monell?
Monell.
Okay, let me write that in the comment section. Monell liability. Google.
Right.
Okay, so you know, and I always, that's a great pointer, honestly, because I always do that. Once I post, I immediately take a screenshot. So because I anticipate some, and it has happened to me where they have deleted it, and I've told them, I've let them know, listen, you're possibly going to get yourself into a legal situation because, okay, so what about the question, how do you distinguish? Because even though it might appear like it's their public official social media site, they might say, no, that's my personal, that's my personal page. I do what I want on there, and they're in office or a candidate.
Well, you see, that's where things really get tricky. Okay. You know, there's a lot of different cases about how this is handled. Some things are more murky than others. For starters, you have to see, is it an official page? Is it a personal page? Is it a campaign page? You know, those are the three kinds of pages you can have. For example, with Philip Levine, he maintained 3 different Facebook pages. A Vote for Phil, which was his campaign page, which he only used on the campaign. A personal page, which is like for his friends. It was just Phil Levine.
Right. Is there any liability there, even though they're in office?
Well, I'm getting there. Gotcha. Then he had a third page that was called Mayor Levine, where he called himself a government official. Like that was the category of page he was. So there's no restriction on how these pages are technically used. There may be some ethics requirements out there, but I'm not aware of them personally. But like the personal page, as long as you're not posting any matters of public business, can remain totally personal. Okay. You could block people. That's, you know, you're sharing your baby photos. You're talking about news of the day. You're not discussing public business that pertains to your seat or your office. That's personal. A political page, when you're not in office, when you're a candidate, vote for me, I'm the candidate. That's also technically a private page. Okay. Nobody has filed suit to say, well, if you're a candidate, can you block me or not? But generally speaking, a political campaign of a non-elected office holder is a private entity. and so is the campaign page. So they can block people on their campaign pages. That's how journalists were being kicked out of Donald Trump's rallies in 2016 or his pressers or whatever, because he was a private party running for president.
So has there been case law on that? Grinders, that just
I don't believe there's case law, but the reason why there isn't is because that's a pretty clear line about the kicking out of the private event. And I think that it pretty much extends into the digital space. If it's just a campaign, account, and it's not being used to disseminate official business, formulate and communicate knowledge about official business, which is the standard for public records in Florida. There's kind of an intersection between these two situations here. Then, yeah, they can block people. But when somebody's in office, it's a little bit different. It's a hazy question. Hey, if I'm Representative Bob Jones representing District 100 in the state legislature, can my campaign account start blocking people? If I'm posting on it and I'm talking about the issues that impact people, it's a little murky.
What do you advise in the absence of any legal remedy that one might have? Because you are being excluded from discussion, even though it's murky.
Well,
what do you advise to do?
When you get blocked, tell everybody that you got blocked and why. And if you don't know why you got blocked, say, I don't know why so-and-so blocked me, but he must be afraid of X, Y, and Z. You can raise the profile by saying, look, this person's trying to censor me. And you'll get more sunshine on that issue than you would have if they had done nothing. One of the best examples, and it's not an elected official example, which makes it even better in my opinion, because it shows the power of it. When a public figure blocks a nominally private figure, Bret Stephens is a New York Times columnist. He is considered conservative, and he's a big free speech advocate. Such a big free speech advocate that he found a Virginia professor who criticized him on Twitter, who had 100 followers, and then contacted his bosses trying to get him fired from his professorship, a pretty acute form of censorship, and blocked him on Twitter. And he went on Twitter and said, I can't believe that Bret Stephens did this. And now he has like over 100,000 followers.
Wow.
Or another great example is Devin Nunes, the representative from California, the Republican, who, he's been investigated by their ethics, the House Ethics Committee multiple times. He's still under investigation for his role in the impeachment affair, where he presided over the proceedings while he was also involved in the actual acts. He blocked and then filed a lawsuit against an account named Devin Cow, @DevinCow. And that account had 1,200 people following him and said things like, Devin better move along. And now Devin Cow has 600,000 plus followers.
Wow. So they created a worse situation rather than just ignore somebody, a insignificant, quote unquote, dissenter. Look at now.
Well, now to educate your viewers, there's a name for this. Okay. It's
Barbara
called the Streisand effect. Right. You can Google that.
I know.
Google it. You'll see a picture of Barbara Streisand's house. Barbara Streisand sued to suppress that picture, and it went global. Nobody had really seen that picture of her house until she sued. But she sued to suppress, and then you put that information into the public record, and the effect is that internet publishers will then seek to publish the censored information. So, I mean, that is the primary way of blowing back at these elected officials and at these candidates. You don't discount it, but the legal remedies are kind of awesome if you do have a case against a public official, which is that you can march into court and you can file a civil rights action in federal court. Okay, it's the USC 42 USC 1983. It's basically when somebody violates your civil rights under color of law. And it applies to your state and local officials. Well, mostly your local officials. The state may not be as easy to get, but it applies to any elected official for sure.
And then who pays the bill if they lose because they did something foolish and unconstitutional?
Unfortunately, the government pays the bill. They may not have to pay the bill, but they will pay your bill, and you will have proven your point in the most public way possible. You could get some remedies, some relief. I could have done that with Catherine Fernandez Rundle and said she violated the Constitution. by denying me that public record and sued in court and said she violated my First Amendment right to know, because there's a First Amendment right to know what public officials are doing as well.
Taxpayer has to be upset that they have to foot the bill for that when they should just be
Absolutely
following the
correct.
Constitution.
And more than that, in Florida, we have a different situation where, once you've been blocked, the best thing you can do is ask them for their block list, see who else they're blocking, because that's valuable political information. You'll get a list of all of their enemies, and maybe you want to talk with them too.
And maybe you all want to form a coalition, the stronger in numbers, and have your pool of collaborators to be able to disseminate the word out even wider, than just you by yourself.
And if you request the information and you've been blocked and they don't give it to you, file suit. File suit. A good lawsuit is like a press release. Everybody will know at that point, and you'll have made your point. You'll have amplified your point using the Streisand effect that way. It's not the classic Streisand effect, but the concept that people want to see things that are suppressed is kind of universal.
So I asked not too long ago on my Facebook account, what are the characteristics of an ideal leader? Give me a checklist of items to measure those in positions of leadership or those who wish to lead. And one of the best, I think, responses was from a local attorney, Carmen Miller, who said the one of all the lists that she gave, ability to listen to criticism. She was right on. Ability to listen. When a leader does not have the ability to listen to criticism, Grant, is that fascistic?
It can be very fascistic. And I want you to just think about the case of Miami-Dade County. The mayor of Miami-Dade County sold his soul to Donald Trump to try and win a Republican primary this upcoming Tuesday. Hasn't done much about the pandemic. Sat down with Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, who's also...
Are we talking about Francis?
No. I'm talking about Mayor Jimenez, Carlos Jimenez. Francis is not running in anything else yet. He'll have to defend his seat next year. But, DeSantis is also deeply in bed in Trump. And then Jimenez and DeSantis had a press conference together, and they did this who's on first routine about contact tracing. And that's why you see this giant pandemic that shut down our entire state's economy.
Contact tracing 6 months into the pandemic.
Yeah, like this was like
that's
they just couldn't figure out who was on first. Oh, we made the request. Oh, but you had to make the request. Oh no, we made the request. Well, do we have the money? Yeah, we have the money. What's going on here? Nobody could figure it out.
Yeah.
But
we're
like
what 5 million already in our which
now,
is a small amount, but it's 5 million.
Look, to his credit, Carlos Jimenez doesn't block people on Twitter. But to his detriment, the number one feedback I've heard from every single person who's ever known the man, and I agree with it, is that he's very arrogant. He thinks he knows everything, and he doesn't listen to his critics ever. And that is a harsh criticism of any public official. And it is, I'm just saying, like, he doesn't even block anybody on social media, and people all have that same feedback. Just imagine what people think of somebody like Mayor Philip Levine, who came in third in a Democratic primary after spending $35 million, and he didn't even win his home county. That's pretty bad.
So is that a deal breaker when we find these public officials in office that do not take criticism well and dissent suppress as they do in these other nations? They did silence criticism. Is that a deal breaker for them to remain?
Yes.
Do you think so? Yes. I'm asking for your opinion.
If you're involved in the campaign, if you're one of the constituents, to tell your friends, this guy is not fit for public office because he blocked me on social media when I criticized him. I think that's the number one thing that anybody should share if that happens to them. Shout it from the rooftops, because you're really telling everybody who's listening, this person is unfit for office. And there's a very, very objective criteria to what you're saying. He blocked me. He's a public official. He does not want to listen.
Yep. And so for those who are public figures and who do that.
That's for public officials.
No, I understand. But let's say that that's the sort of behavior that you see, because I've seen that behavior and I've called it out with candidates, and you taught me something today. You did. And
Yeah.
if it's a campaign, it's like akin to a personal page where they can do whatever. And you know what? I've gotten that response when I've said, "Hey, you're a candidate and you're blocking me because I'm criticizing you," and they've said, "This is my page." So, but it's behavior that, even though I might not have legal redress or be able to go into a court,
The
I
court
can
of public opinion is always open.
I can well, and not only that, I can exactly, but more so, that's something that you can exactly, like you said, the court of public opinion, go out there and disseminate it and let the voters be aware of the fact that a candidate is behaving in a manner that is an attribute that's not good, that it's, like you said, not fit for office.
Yeah. I mean, that is as simple as it gets. As simple as it gets. And people are always looking for strong clues of, is this person good for office or not? This is one of the most simple ones there is. Not willing to listen, and one thing I would tell you is that with private people who have totally the right to block you, I mean, I'm a private citizen, I'm a public figure, but that doesn't mean there's no law that says I can't block you. But I'll tell you what, I've been blocked by some of the best.
You have, and you want to tell us about that, because it's pretty comical. You have a pretty impressive list of blockages.
Well, I got blocked by Meghan McCain, the host of McCain, excuse me, Meghan McCain, the host of The View, for basically pointing out the fact that she doesn't want people talking about her father. But, would she even have the job she has if it wasn't for her famous last name? Probably not. So the Washington Post wrote about that one because she blocked me after I posted about her and tagged her. And I was like, well, got to let the whole world know about this one.
Right.
But another good one is Michael Cohen, President Trump's former attorney, and his eldest son, Don Jr., have both blocked me. And I've done investigative reporting about both of them. And little did they know that by blocking me, they fueled the spread of that reporting far beyond what I could have achieved if they had simply ignored me.
So it's a win-win.
It was a win-win, even though that's a private party. I mean, every time there's something about a Don Jr., I just post the same story. Don Jr. blocked me for uncovering his ties to the bank that issued a Russian money laundering manual. And here you go.
So
that's a true story, by the way. We got to copy the manual, and we've got the pictures of him with the banker. It's not like a question. The bank even responded and said he had no other business with us besides that paid speaking gig. I'm like, thanks for confirming.
Grant, I try not to block people. This week, I had a candidate here for sheriff who I had a disagreement with. He came on and I started asking him questions. He totally veered off the parameters that I'd set for a few minutes to give points of his platform. Goes into this whole full discussion on cannabis and the full legalization of it, because he's not going to enforce it in the county if he wins. And he took issue with the fact that I started asking him questions. So I get to ask questions. So he goes on, and it got not very nice on the comment thread. And he said some things that were not, I didn't feel all happy about. And I kept those critical comments on. Is there a criteria that you use where you're like, you know what, even though I'm First Amendment and I like everyone to say things, even criticism of my person, that you say, no, this is, I got to block this person?
That's a really good question. I do have that kind of criteria. Basically, as long as somebody is actually responding to an actual policy or topic of discussion, then I'll go ahead and, leave it up. Like if there's some legitimate policy discussion, if somebody is spouting off about the crazy conspiracy of the week that, has been debunked 50 times, or
what if they're impugning you unfairly or untruthfully?
I was going to say ad hominem, which is, attacks on the person. If they attack me, or if they, are attacking somebody else, like personally, like, oh, this person's bad because they're a pedophile and, this, that, or the other. I'm just like, no, thanks. Like, We don't
You
need name calling here.
you
Like, when
you
something's
exercise
involved in
your
name calling.
you exercise your ability to just go ahead and delete it. Do you block them or do you
Well,
just delete the comment?
You know what? It depends. It depends. Is it like, something that's public forum? Is it somebody I know? Is it somebody I don't know? Is it a
Got it.
profile that looks suspicious? I mean, I'll look at all these avenues on Twitter. It happens a little more often because you'll see these people with a string of numbers in their handle, and they signed up last month. Block, goodbye. I'll hit hide the replies or whatever.
So it's a case by case for you.
Yeah, sometimes I'll mute them. So a lot of people, if they say something offensive to me, I'll just hit mute. They can keep screaming at me all they want. I'm just not going to see it. I mean,
Got it.
I hate to say it, but it does get a little different when you have like 103,000 people following you.
I can imagine.
You can't monitor every comment. I mean, there are still people on Facebook that say, "Hey, didn't you see that comment I wrote on your Facebook?" And I'm like, my dude, if I monitored every single comment,
it's a full-time job.
Full-time job. No, it's a full-time job for like a team of 4 people. I mean, seriously?
Yes.
I saw 2,400 replies last month. It's like 1 reply per minute for a whole month.
Could you? I can imagine.
So obviously I'm not like interacting with everybody, but if I see it, I try not to block people. If somebody's legitimate, they're making a legitimate response and not like, telling me about what QAnon thinks or, a Soros conspiracy or something else, even more offensive, then, I'll leave it up there, whatever,
or you know what? Or an assertion that's not supported by facts. That's not accurate. That's not truthful. I have a problem with that. But yet, nonetheless, you know what? That happened this week. It's still up. I didn't delete it. My parents left Cuba, fled from an oppressive regime that doesn't honor civil rights.
Well, don't let them move to Miami because they will find things have reverted to form, unfortunately, here.
Yeah. Listen, I see it. It's not just in Miami, Grant. It's not just in Miami. I promise
you. It's not just in Miami. I know. I've reported on it nationally, but it's especially bad down here. I've seen.
That's sad. That's sad. And she is she Cuban? Does she have a Cuban background? Because she's Spanish.
Fernandez Rundle.
Yeah.
Yeah, Fernandez. Yeah. But I mean,
I think she is.
But it's like, think of it this way, okay? The City of Miami Police Department is still under a federal monitoring agreement. They hired Jane Castor to be the federal monitor.
Oh, I'm glad that you're touching upon this now because I want you to come back. I want you to come back this week.
The paperwork 8 months later to say that she wouldn't start for 8 months, even though it said on the paperwork that she backdated that she would start 8 months later.
Wait, let me
turned it in 8 months late. Yeah, I just let people listen to that because it's just. She backdated something in December from April, but the thing that she backdated said she should have started in April anyway, but she didn't. And then she turned it in December and didn't start until December. I don't know if she got paid for those 8 months, but she still should have been working.
You know what? It's interesting.
Then she did as little as possible for quite a while.
It's interesting that you mentioned her because I was going to ask you a question. There's some stuff happening out here. Okay, under her, she became the mayor, and there's some stuff that, and I want you to come back on this week, or I know you're headed out to have a vacation, but I want to bring you on because there's some interesting things happening with protesters. Her agency, she's one. I emailed her. Coincidentally, I emailed her agency today because she does not respond to emails, my emails. And I think she's hurt from this website that I created.
Wait, as the mayor, is she the police commissioner of Tampa?
As the mayor, she's the boss to the chief of Tampa.
Right, but is she the commissioner or is she in charge? Like she's the boss of the chief?
Yes.
Like she can hire and fire.
Yes, I believe so. I think maybe I'm not definitive on that. She is the boss. I mean, I do believe he answers to her, and I think maybe if she wanted to, maybe she'd have to present it before the city council.
Person to get police accountability in this entire state would be Jane Castor, and I'm putting her even behind Catherine Fernandez Rundle because Rundle we know is institutionally horrible, but Jane Castor had a highly paid consulting gig that she pretty much threw in the toilet.
Look at this. Look at this
maneuver I told you about, and then
I reported about it out here to the community.
But that's the thing. It just doesn't matter that she even signed it late. She signed the agreement that she was doing all the work anyway, and she brashed our monitoring. She cut it all short with her campaign and then tried to end it as if everything was okay. And I'll tell you right now, I interviewed the head of the City of Miami Police Union before she was appointed and asked about the MOU. And he said, oh, yeah, we implemented this, we implemented that. We already implemented everything before the MOU started. There's nothing to look at here. And Jane pretty much adopted that opinion from what I can tell. And Jane Castor is like that. But
would you be willing to come on once you come back from your vacation, please? Again, like for an hour, we'll take calls. I want you to comment on some of the stuff that's happening out here.
Sure. But I'm just saying, like, her department was known as a racist department. The Tampa Bay Times, they did an amazing story about how her department was arresting African Americans on bicycles at a ridiculous multiple.
80%.
Right, at a ridiculous multiple of the population, compared to white bikers. They were just going and arresting everybody. And then they were giving tickets to children who could then no longer get a driver's license. I mean, talk about directly depressing the economic opportunity in a particular community by targeting it and targeting a completely lawful activity that you're not targeting in another community. That is the very definition of disparate impact. And Jane Castor was the chief of that department.
You know what? I didn't even think of even asking you this because I didn't think you'd bring up with.
She's going to support the people supporting the cops because she's one of them.
Well, you know what happened? You know what happened? A group, they did a mural on the street right in front of at a certain street. I don't know if it was by the police station, but back the blue. Okay. They hadn't gone through the permitting process, which they had to, and they did it anyways. Nothing happened. There are no consequences to this group. The mural's still there, hasn't been washed out as a consequence. Like, no, you can't do that. But then yet this weekend, a group, Black Lives Matters group, went and did the same. They thought, hey, if somebody can go and do a mural in support of law enforcement without even waiting for the permitting process to conclude, then I guess it's okay for us to do it too. Well, what happened? Arrests happened. They were like, oh, no, not. So there's disparity there. And so the governing officials need
disparity like that. That outlines, you see, what you're describing there. It outlines the very, very heart of content-based censorship. Okay, that is almost literally the definition, where you're saying this content is acceptable, but there's a disparate reaction to our content. So you're saying that our content is not acceptable. Now you're going to enforce the law, right?
Right.
I mean, that's selective enforcement as well. You can call that a 14th Amendment violation for, violating 14th and 5th Amendment equal protection rights under the law. But it is at its heart a content-based censorship regime. And somebody should file suit over that, because
I agree.
Anything that you're expressing something to the public, especially the highest protections are for when you're expressing a grievance about government. So for them to retaliate, it's shameful. And whoever took action should really be punished in civil court. And, let's be real here. In the next Congress, there's a lot of action if the Congress, if Congress changes hands in 2021, there's a lot of expectation that our civil rights laws will be rewritten for the modern era. And they need to be. They absolutely need to be. Number one, and I'll wrap up with this. Number one, qualified immunity is a judge-created doctrine. It's not even a law. There's no law that says you have to pass this test. Judges created it because 100 years ago, 120 years ago, when they came up with this idea, they were trying to get rid of the frivolous litigants of their time. And you could totally understand from a 19th century perspective why this would be important. It's because you didn't have the ability to generate recordings and create, exhibits that supplement evidentiary testimony in a way that can't be disputed. Objective evidence as opposed to testimonial evidence, even though that's not considered evidence under our court system. So without that, they had to come up with some way of making sure that these cops were, number one, given enough latitude to do their job, and number two, not held responsible for every crank that showed up and made a complaint. But those days are long gone. They've been dispelled with the advent of the cell phone camera, and it's time to dispel with the qualified immunity doctrine with it. I mean, it's going to be written out of the law. They're going to say this does not exist. Stop it. But I think furthermore, there needs to be an update to how these laws are enforced, how they're everything, how they're written, so that they're written in a manner that covers a broader range of effect from the constitutional underpinnings. Because all they're doing, statute like the civil in the 42 USC 1983,
Right.
that is just there to give legislative impact to the intent of these foundational documents.
Okay, listen, I know we got to wrap up. You got to leave. I know you're busy. Thank you so much for being with me here for the hour and informing my viewers. I just want you to just take a quick look at this. You don't have to do a full analysis. Just tell me, and we can leave it, table it for the next discussion when you come on for us to talk about Jane Castor. I'm going to do a screen share real quick because I want you to see this.
Well, before I go, please give me a follow at Grant Stern on Twitter. That's at
Absolutely.
GRANTSTERN.
Hold on. Let me write that. Let me write that, Grant. What? So say that again, Grant.
At GRANTSTERN. You can find my book series, meetthecandidates2020.com. That's Meet the Candidates.
Okay, wait. So Grant at
Grant. That's my at Grant Stern is my Twitter handle. That's the best way to catch up with me. The most stuff posted.
Are you able to type that up in the comment section, Grant, real quickly, so that I get it?
Absolutely.
Go ahead and then I'll post it with you. But I want you to just comment on this real quickly. I'm gonna fast forward to the.
Sure.
Okay, hold on. I'm gonna fast forward real quickly. This is a person, and I'm just gonna set it up real quickly. There's a black woman now. She's filming as her friend is being arrested. Okay, and there's a cop that you're gonna see that pushes her.
Well, that is the classic scenario. Go right ahead.
Wait. Why did that happen?
Replay it. Bottom left corner there. You can replay. There you go. Yeah.
Okay, there we go. Right there. Did you see that?
Yes.
Do you think that that's okay? She has a First Amendment right to record, and there are exceptions, of course. There's obstruction of the investigation, whatever. Do you think that take issue with that, or do you need me to replay that?
I'd like you to replay it.
Okay, let me replay that.
So it's not 100% black and white. These issues never. Well, some, but this is one of the clear black and white ones. Does it look like it's a simple battery? Yes. Is he going to come up with some sort of? I was just about to say, in order to justify something like that, they only have to come up with the most simple excuse. And considering that there's not a lot of distance between them while he's recording that, it's not going to be a situation where you like walk into court and the judge is going to go, well, definitely you've violated this established right and it's clear. So it would be very difficult to get redress in a court of law for that reason, in my opinion, based on what I've been told by counsel.
Yeah, she was too close.
Well, he kept following them as they're taking this person away. And the best approach would be to just stand in one place and just record it. Because first of all, they could say that you were obstructing the officer if you're too close and you're like literally getting in the way. And that is actually a criminal offense. And this person could be charged and have to go through a whole trial themselves. That's how gray area it is. You could make an argument on both sides. And, if you really want to do this the right way, don't take your side of the argument. Don't do it, because you already know your side. You're going to win your own argument with yourself every time. Imagine you're in their shoes. Hey, look, we're just trying to cart this guy away, and this guy recording is like trailing us like to the point where he's almost on top of us. They'll say, look, what if this guy decides to drop the camera or toss the camera and help their friend? That's not a hard argument for them to make, and that's it. You lose. And I'm telling you right now, getting that close during the arrest and following them, he's very fortunate that they didn't arrest him and charge him with obstruction or obstructing an officer or her, excuse me. Or if they gave her verbal orders to stop, they could say that she did not obey the lawful command. Because once they've arrested this person and they appear to be under arrest, whether it's lawful or not is between them and the officer, not you as the bystander. So the best thing to do would be to stand in somewhere public, like it looked like they were in a public space,
From a
where
good
they could-
distance.
and let the distance grow. Safe distance is very important, because the closer you are to getting charged with obstructing an officer performing their duties, which I would say that tape has more power as evidence in a obstruction trial than it does in obtaining redress in civil court. So it shows an activity that should be actually discouraged, which is getting too close to the police while they're doing their job. Even if what they're doing is wrong, your job is to be there as a witness and your camera to be the witness. When they stop you from recording because you've gotten too close, you've become part of the scene now. And that can happen, but it's something you shouldn't actively seek.
You right on. Hit the link again.
Well, yeah, I'm actually heading into another event, Nard. I don't have time right now. Maybe will tomorrow be a good time?
So we'll do tomorrow.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I just had a candidate for sheriff in Hillsborough, Boswell. He's in the Republican primary the 18th, and so he didn't have time. He had to jump off. Thanks, Grant, for joining me. It was awesome, very informative. For those of you who are watching, who will be watching, you can learn more about Grant at https twitter.com//Grant Stern. And he's awesome. He's just a really, really nice guy, very informative, very knowledgeable, has fire in his belly, and fights the good fight every day. And thank you for what you do, Grant. Thanks for joining me. Heidi Oropesa for Florida You Judge, and I will be back soon. I don't know whether tomorrow, Monday, but I will notify you all. Have a great day and weekend. Thank you. Bye, Grant.
Bye.